Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I have read recently. The first book I'm going to start with is my 5-star book because I really thoroughly enjoyed this, and that book is Staunch by Eleanor Woods. So I requested this as an advanced reader's copy from NetGalley. It sounded really good, so I was like, yeah, let me pick it up. And from the sounds of it, I thought it was a fiction book. But it's actually non-fiction. Either way, I thought it was brilliant. This book is basically about Eleanor Woods and a trip that she takes to India with, I think it's her nan, it's definitely her grandma, her aunt, and I think like her auntie, another auntie, maybe, so maybe it's 2 aunties and a grandma. And she finds herself in, I think it's Goa, India with them. And you basically learn more about Eleanor's life through the course of the story and also their lives. I will read you the blurb so you get a better understanding of why perhaps this book sounded like it was going to be a fictional book. So it says here, Eleanor finds herself in her late 30s on the beach in India with 3 old ladies trying to find herself and discover her family history, like some sad middle-class crisis cliche. How did she get here? Truthfully, it could be for any one of the below reasons, if not all combined. Stepmom dying / stepdad leaving, family falling apart, subsequent psychotic break, both parents now on 3rd marriage. Breaking up with Jay after 12 years. Breaking up a whole life, a whole fucking universe for reasons that may have been misguided. New boyfriend moving in immediately, me insisting it's not a rebound, even after everyone has stopped listening, being cited in his messy divorce, him being sectioned, then breaking up with me. Going into therapy after dating a potentially violent, certainly threatening, narcissistic, the most pertinent point of which should be noted, I did not break up with him, he ghosted me. How to address this situation? Take a trip to India with your octogenarian nan and 2 great aunts, of course. So yes, that is basically Eleanor's life. So she's trying to overcome some really horrible emotional things in her past. Obviously her relationship has ended. The ending of her relationship with her stepfather, who was married to her mum, is particularly quite sad to read because she was really close to him. She knew him from when I think she was about 8 or something like that. And obviously some other sort of normal rebounding things and stuff like that as well. So the majority of this book actually takes place in India, and you're just finding out about their time there and how she spent her time there. And honestly, I just feel like this whole book reads like it's quite a fictional book, which I find it really funny. When she's in India, she's going to do a lot of yoga, doing like a lot of shopping, and she's just talking about her day-to-day interactions with people, and also talking about her nan and her 2 aunts, because the history behind them and why they've actually gone to India is also a focal point of this story. Her nan and her 2 aunts are Indian in the sense that they were born in India, and then they had to leave when there was some sort of, I wouldn't say a coup or something happening, I'm not too sure, and then they had to come over to England, which was, you know, meant to be their home, but a lot of the kids had never actually lived here before, so to them India was home. I think out of the 3, only 1 aunt really doesn't remember living there. The grandma for sure, and one of the aunts is a little bit older, so they remember their life there. So she recounts to us what it was like when her family came to the UK. They actually came to Glasgow, and I think then like one of the aunts just hopped on a train and went to London and made a life there. She's really talking about how these women made a life for themselves when they were like thrust into a new country that they barely even knew, and that was very interesting to see. And essentially the title of this book is Staunch, because staunch I think refers to the fact that someone is strong, has a lot of character. So what she's trying to show is that, you know, she has these 3 awesome figures in her life who are so staunch that she really gets on with her nan and she really gets on with her aunts, and through telling us their stories she's really trying to show how powerful and how fearful these women are. And I just think it's a really nice nod to them. And then obviously she's also weaving in bits of her life and how she's trying to take some sort of lesson from all of this, and how perhaps she can use some of what they have done so that she can be staunch as well. I think this book was really nicely tied up. Like, it came at a really good time for me to read it. I think it's a really good feel book. I think she is awesome at really recognising her privilege. Like, it's one of those things where I don't really always expect people to check their privilege and things like this, but it's really nice to see that Eleanor has such a broad awareness of herself. She's very much aware of how privileged she is to live the life that she has, to be able to have written books. She's written previous books before and live off of that, but obviously how privileged she is to have such a close relationship with her family, especially these 3 older people, and be able to go on holiday with them. And it is just really nice because I don't have that, so I don't know what that's like, but also one of the characters in the books, one of the people in the book says to her, you know, it's so nice that you're here looking after, you know, your grandma and your 2 aunts, because obviously they're significantly older than her. Like, loads of people just don't really care about the older generation anymore. And I just thought that was really sweet. I have a lot of friends who are obviously really close with their grandparents and stuff like that, but it was just really nice to read it in a book, because I don't actually often come across that mainly in loads of books, like even in fictional books. I'm sure they probably reference grandparents somewhere, but this was very much, you know, a showing thing, and you just got to see how close she was through them. And like I said, again, she's very aware of the privilege she has, the privilege that, you know, her aunt and grandmother had, because obviously when they were living in India, they had servants, they had huge houses, and, you know, obviously for them coming to the UK, yeah, it was a huge shock, but not as much of a shock as it would have been for a person of colour coming from India, because their experience would have been widely different. So yeah, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was well written, I thought it was funny, I really enjoyed hearing about her time in India, enjoyed hearing about her grandmother's life and her aunt's life. Like, they all did really kick-ass things. Not like they were running marathons or anything, but just the kind of things that happened in their lives too. They had a lot of resilience. I think Eleanor really showcased that really well. So yeah, that was an enjoyable read, and I'm so glad I read it. Like, it just wasn't what I was expecting, but it was brilliant. The next book I'm going to speak about is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I actually picked this up maybe a month or so ago. I picked this up in Waterstones because my boyfriend had like a free £20 voucher, and he was like, let's use it to buy books. So I picked this up just because I was just like, I've heard so much about it and I want to read it. You probably already know what Convenience Store Woman is about, but it's about our main character. What is her name? She is that Kiyoko. 36 years old, she's never had a boyfriend, and she's been working in the same convenience store for 18 years. Her parents wish she had a better job, her friends wonder why she won't get married, but Kiko knows what makes her happy, and she's not going to let anyone take away from her convenience store. And yes, we basically follow Kiko. An incident happens where, you know, it's a bit of a life change, where someone comes into life and she has to kind of make a change, but not really. The situation is very weird and stilted. I don't know if it's just the way it's written, maybe the way it's translated, but the way that situation is anywhere is just a bit like, why would anyone want that? Like, her life definitely seems like 10 times better without that. And that's her story. A lot of it takes place in the convenience store. It talks about the process of the different things that she does in the store, and I guess how methodical it is, and how that's just really calming for her, really. And when she talks about other aspects of her life, you just get the fact that she likes things in a certain way, and she likes that consistency, that routine. That's all she's after. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars because, honestly, I didn't think there was anything to it. I didn't think it was good. I didn't think it was particularly terrible. If the story had developed a bit more, I would have given it more of a higher rating, but as it stands, there wasn't much of a story. It's legit about a woman in a convenience store, and then the situation happens with this guy who comes to work at a convenience store. It's all very weird. It tries to say, obviously, a lot about society and the things that society does, you know, in terms of like when we get married, when we have kids, and how we treat women who aren't married and women who don't have kids. But the book is so short that it doesn't really get a chance to, I don't know, express more about that, and it just kind of touches on it and then walks away from it, and I was just like, okay. I think also my rating of this is sort of overshadowed by the fact that I've heard loads of people talking about it, and I was expecting a lot more from the book. I think had I had picked this up just by my own sort of admission and not had it been hyped up, perhaps it would have been a 3, but I was also matching it up to the hype that I'd heard about it, and for me this book was just okay. Like, there was no story for me, and plot doesn't always have to be a crucial element, but whilst there's also no story, the things that it's trying to touch on about women in their role in society, it's also very lightly done. So it's just a bit like, what is this book here for? So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on the book. It was okay. I don't think I would actually recommend anyone to read this book. It's not terrible, but there's not that much of substance in it that I'm like, wow, you definitely need to read this. Next book I'm going to speak about is When I Had a Little Sister, The Story of a Farming Family Who Never Spoke by Catherine Simpson. I will start off by saying I feel weird about this book because I thought it was going to be about a lot more than it actually was. I think, and this is a general consensus when I read the reviews, a lot of people expected this book to be an exploration about her sister, mainly focused on her sister, whereas it very much is the subtitle where it's like the story of a farming family who never spoke, and she takes us through a lot of history and just what her family was like, and I'm just a bit like, why is all of this in the book? Until I kind of just went back and read the back of the book and I was like, okay, I kind of understand why. So I'm going to read the blurb to you. On a cold December day in 2013, Catherine Simpson received a phone call she had feared for years. Her little sister Tricia had been found dead in the farmhouse where she, Catherine, and their sister Elizabeth were born, and where their family had lived for generations. Tricia was 46 and had been stalked by depression all her life, yet mental illness was a taboo subject within the family, and although love was never lacking, there was a silence at its heart. After Tricia died, Catherine found she had kept a lifetime of diaries. The words in them took her back to a past they had shared but experienced so differently, and offered a thread to explore the labyrinth of her sister's suicide. When I Had a Little Sister is a memoir about a Lancashire farming family whose love of their land came hand in hand with the resilience to live off of it, and whose way of life has now all but disappeared. Searingly honest, yeah, get over. So that is the book, and I guess it's really about page 136 where you actually find out like about her sister and more about her sister. The majority of the beginning is very much taking it through the history of their family, so talking about their mum, what their mum was like, and just what different, like who lived on the farm with them and things like that, and just the generations the farm had passed through. But yeah, it's around page 136 where she starts sharing sort of excerpts of her sister's diary. I remember, so I got this when I went to an event, and I remember, I think Catherine Simpson spoke at the event. I just remember thinking, I don't know if I really read that, because I feel like I don't want to read someone's diary. Obviously that's a really personal decision to take, to read your sister's diary, and you know that she's family. But I know I could not handle it if anyone read my diary. I'd have to burn these things before I die. But I felt a bit uneasy kind of reading this book. I guess I don't like the idea of going through someone's personal stuff. But then also in this book, Catherine is also talking about like her own present day, and she's like on like a writing fellowship, and she's also talking about the fact that she shares excerpts of her diary with these people, and I just thought that was a bit unnecessary. Like, they're gonna read it in the book anyway. I thought it was just, there was a level of I guess maybe morality it caused for me that I just wasn't really comfortable with. So at times when we were reading sort of it was her summary of what her sister has said, I just kind of felt a bit awkward. But either way, I guess she's trying to share a really honest version of her sister. She talks about her sister, and she also talks, obviously, like I said, about her mum and things like that, and you kind of get to see from the background of when she's talking about her family that depression has sort of been a generational curse for this family, and it's just so sad to read about like other people in their family who you probably know has suffered with some sort of mental illness, but it was never talked about, so they were never able to get help. And as much as they knew Tricia was ill, I find it really interesting that even in this book, I don't think Catherine really deep dives into that right further until the end, but I feel like the way she talks about it is very much how it was done in their family. So it's kind of shrouded in mystery for you, the reader, as well. And I don't know if that was a writing technique that was used or if that was just the way Tricia was writing, but it very much makes you feel like you don't know much, even though you know something is wrong. You don't know too much that you think, yeah, for certain something is wrong. It's just not really spoken about. Whilst I was reading this book, I kind of kept thinking, oh, she's not touching on her sister's illness and all this sort of things. And I sort of questioned my sort of thoughts and like my mentality around that. Like, why did I need to know the nitty-gritties to be satisfied with the story? She does sometimes go deeper into her sister's illness, like towards the end of the book, but I feel like that's very much towards the end of the book. And I don't know, for me personally as a reader, I kind of lost like my, I don't know, reason to want to read this about halfway through, because I kept questioning my need to know more about this book and why I wasn't really liking this book. I feel really weird reviewing it because I just don't know how to review it. How can I sit here and say, well, I didn't think the book was that good because she didn't give us a deep dive of her sister's illness. Like, you know what I mean? That's just me being nosy and me prying. So yeah, I feel really weird at reviewing this book. But the other thing that I didn't like about this book, though, which I think is not really, prying into her sister's illness, is there are images in this book that are, scattered across the book, and sometimes she talks about something and says, this is a picture of so-and-so and there's a picture there. But sometimes you just turn a page and there's a picture, and there's absolutely no reference to what the picture is, and I'm just a bit like, why is this picture here? Or sometimes she'll talk about a picture and it's not there. I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, it's just really annoying. Obviously she might have not been able to find the picture, but I just kind of think you could just do away with that sentence. So yeah, that was like one of my only gripes with the story. But yeah, overall I find it really hard to review this. I think I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I found that was probably a good balance for me. But yeah, I think it's also really hard to sometimes review memoirs anyway because they're very personal, but this is obviously very hard to review because it's a memoir sort of about Catherine herself. She talks about her own struggles with mental illness, but then she's also talking about her family, and she's also talking about her sister. So there's a lot of focal points in here that perhaps aren't given the attention that they deserve, and there was just probably a bit too much in here. But yeah, I guess also my own personal gripes there. The diary reading was a bit much for me, but yeah. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those books. So obviously we had a wonderful 5-star read that I really liked, and I think I actually gave When I Had a Little Sister 2 stars now I think about it, and then obviously Convenience Store 2 stars. So yeah, not the best sort of reading time with those books, but Staunch was so good that I feel like it sort of balances out, not even balances out this video, but sort of balances out the fact that, you know, I read those 2 books and I didn't really enjoy it. But that is it for today's video. Let me know if you have any questions about any of these books. Happy to discuss them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!